When did you know you were going to marry your now wife? H and I had been dating for a couple of years. We were set up on a blind date by my college friend's then girlfriend who had gone to high school with H. We'd been together for about 2.5 to 3 years. She transferred from her community college to my university for a third year. Then we moved into a townhouse-style dorm. Meant more for students with families, but open to 2 students if they weren't married. Got our first cat, etc., and had been living there for the better part of a year. Now, in all this time, H was extremely quiet when it came to her past. She seemed to hate communicating with certain members of her family. Wasn't all that intimate and just kind of kept to herself most of the time. We'd have great conversations about things, talk about classes and thoughts and current events, but when it came to her past, nothing. In spite of this, I was head over heels for her. While I've always worn my heart on my sleeve, with her it was different. A real connection. The kind where you can communicate without words at times was what I felt we had. So I saved up what little earnings I was getting from my crappy part-time jobs, and together with a bit from leftovers from student loan distribution, I had enough to buy an engagement ring. Now to figure out a way to propose. One night before she went to bed, I always stay up a bit later than she does, she comes into the office for a kiss and to wish me goodnight. Then she hands me this letter and hurries down the hall for bed. I opened it, and on that single piece of paper was almost everything about her past. Her issues with her family, her less than wholesome past as she tried to cope with a harsh life in your typical small-town high school filled with bitches and bullies. The entirety of what happened with her diagnosis with type 1 diabetes. How one member of her family went off the religious deep end and tried to run her life for her. I could tell she was still holding some things back, but that was okay. There's always more time, and when she was ready, she eventually told me the rest. I got the ring out of my coat pocket, walked into the bedroom, and knelt next to her. She was scared. More scared than I'd ever seen her. Scared of what I'd think of the note, of her past. I bumbled my way through some reassurances and thanked her for sharing her past with me. I told her how much it meant, and said something about how her sharing her past made me want us to share our future, and proposed. After about 5 solid minutes of crying, she eventually said yes. We got married in the fall of 2022, the semester before I graduated. That was 2.5 years ago, and our first baby is due in July. A boy. Can't wait to continue our future together. I still have the letter, too. It's going to go in the scrapbook we keep putting off. It's really the most important thing in developing a relationship. Opening up all the way. Story 2. We grew up near one another, never knowing each other existed until high school. Even then, she was just a girl I knew in school. Sure, she was smart and beautiful, but we simply didn't hang out in the same groups. We went off to our separate colleges after graduation and didn't see each other again for 5 years. By then, I was in medical school and she was in law school, both first years. She was a Facebook friend who posted a random memory about a comment I made in the class we shared as seniors in high school. It was about me telling off some idiot cheerleader who later became a reality TV contestant. The Vapid was going on and on about prom and graduation and how this is the best time of our lives. I, being the cynical jerk that I was, responded negatively, explaining that if high school was the best time of our lives and we have 60+ years to go, life would be really crappy. Feeling a little bad for taking the wind out of her sails, I attempted to finish the thought a little more positively. Something along the lines of, you should always be trying to improve yourself, or something like that. It doesn't really matter. The point is that this specific Facebook friend of mine remembered it and posted it. As I had been dating around and running to a lot of stupid sorority girls and, ooh, you're going to be a doctor types, I seized the opportunity and asked her out. We went on a few dates, had some fun, never got serious. Then one day she canceled our plans unexpectedly and didn't return my phone call. So I let it be and went about my merry way, dating random girls off and on. Little did I know that she had recently broke up with a boyfriend and was fearful that our relationship would become a rebound for it. 2 years later, I'm a third year now, working hard trying to do my clinical rotations. I get another random Facebook comment on my wall. We banter back and forth and she PMs me her new cell number. 2 days later, she calls me, asking me to join her for her law school's casino night. Basically a fundraiser where you buy tokens to play Vegas-style table games and get to turn the tokens into alcohol. I agree, offer to drive so that she can safely drink and have fun with her school friends, and offer her to crash at my place that night. Casino night turns out to be a bust, secondary to a low turnout and the surprisingly crappy alcohol that was purchased. Thank Malibu. Lots of Malibu. Not wanting the night to be a total bust, I offered to take her back towards my place to a nice bar I know nearby. We were already going there and could safely walk back to my apartment. She declines, replies, what I'd really like is a beer and some pizza. Can we order in? This leads to an exchange on what to get, and we settle on Pizza Hut's pizza rollers. Some awesome interpretations of pizza rolls as big as a fist. We head back to my place, order the pizza, crack open a couple beers, and turn on the TV to await our delicious snacks. That's when she points out my video game collection. Noticing I had the recently released Beatles Rock Band, she goes to say how much she enjoys the game, despite being terrible. We played it nearly until sunrise, scarfed pizza rolls and had a great time. We ended up falling asleep in my bed, not getting physical, but found ourselves cuddling in the morning. 1 month later, we went to a Halloween party together, dressed in Kirk and a red shirt. I told her I loved her that night. 14 months later, I proposed in front of the castle at Disneyland. We got married 7 months ago on April 14th, and I couldn't be happier with my nerdy, goofy girlfriend. Story 3. Thinking about this, I can't really put my finger on a particular moment, but an odd thing popped into my mind that seems relevant. I believe the first time I thought about marrying her was on a trip where I met my future in-laws. I'm aware of how strange that sounds. She met my family a few months after we started dating, which sounds early, but with my family, it's best to just tear that band-aid off as quickly as possible. Also, my parents lived very close. Her parents lived 1,000 miles away. Probably 7 months into dating, she wanted to do a road trip to see her parents and to do a bunch of side trips. We'd done little road trips before, maybe a couple hours in the car. The proposed trip was about 16 hours in the car, each way. I'm not sure how often you've done a 16-hour road trip with someone, much less with someone you're romantically involved with, but that can either be totally awesome or objectively horrible. This trip went swimmingly. Like any long trips, there were issues like 70-mile stretches of interstate without a single open bathroom at 3 in the morning. We handled the hurdles with aplomb and got to know each other better because of it. I can't say for sure that meeting her parents was the tipping moment or not, but any trepidation or dread I had was instantly gone. It wasn't just that they were great people that I had things in common with that didn't respond to my sense of humor as though I'd wiped my bum with a duvet. Interacting with her parents helped me understand where she was coming from, how she was raised, and where some of her personality and quirks came from. Without going on about it for too much longer, I didn't know I was going to marry my wife until she said either yes or, more accurately, I do. But that was when it first occurred to me that I would. Since I was talking about timetables above, I'll just let you know that I proposed after 3 years of dating. We were married a year later and have been married for 8.5 years. Story 4. I was in the Navy and recently divorced. First wife cheated on me while I was at sea and left with everything. Except the debts. I got to keep those, but that's another story. My ship was in the yards in Philadelphia, and a buddy and I took a weekend and visited his girlfriend at her college. I met this girl there. We just happened to have graduated from college the year before, and she was visiting Buddy's girlfriend that same weekend. She lived in Virginia. I was stationed in Philadelphia, and every weekend I didn't have to work. Either I was traveling to see her or she was traveling to see me. We met in January. I knew by March, just exchanging letters and seeing her on weekends, that I was in love. That everything I imagined about my life from that point forward, she was in every single scenario. I just knew. I proposed in July, right before my ship went around South America to change home ports to San Diego. She planned the wedding while I was away, and we were married in November. This November 26 will be 25 years. We have lived all over the country and raised 2 terrific kids. Seeing as how relationships end with men of forces, or people in forces, that's something very valuable. Story 5. My favorite uncle that I used to spend my summers with as a kid was diagnosed with aggressive late-stage cancer. Within 2 days of being hospitalized, he was no longer lucid and had only days left. My mother was with him, and a few days later, a window opened up and he was coherent and able to speak. She called me so I could get to say goodbye. She couldn't get me as I was on the job site, so she called Paige, my girlfriend trying to find me. Paige couldn't get me and asked if she could speak to Uncle Ron. She'd never met him. Her only knowledge of him was the stories I had spent sobbing and telling her over the last few days. She spent 20 minutes on speakerphone with him, recounting all the stories I had told her. She told him how much I loved him, how much I loved my time growing up with him. I didn't speak the whole time. After she hung up, she was able to get me. I called the VA hospital. I got on the phone with him. He told me, "You got one hell of a woman there." Ugh. He was so right. What the hell? So many onions are being chopped right now. Not gonna lie, she's awesome. If this story made you tear up as well, then don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Now let's get back to these amazing stories. Story 6. Not married yet, but I will be in about 7 hours. I knew I'd marry her on our first date. I picked her up in a crappy pink car that was leaking on her, leak and window seal. They took us to the ferry terminal and got us on the wrong ferry. Instead of a 30-minute ride that got us to our destination for a 7 p.m. dinner reservation, it was an hour-long ride followed by a 45-minute drive that finally got us to dinner around 9. Oh, and she gets seasick. Upon getting to dinner, the waiter wished us a happy anniversary. She could barely eat anything due to the nausea. I hadn't paid attention to the return ferry schedule, so when we got back to the terminal around 10:15, we had an hour wait until the next ferry. The previous one had left at 10:10. So why did I know I'd marry her? She was incredibly kind and supportive through it all. She saw me getting visibly flustered on the ferry and reassured me that it was okay. When we got off the ferry, she helped me navigate the hour drive to dinner. At dinner, she was incredibly polite to the waiter. Good conversation was held throughout the whole ordeal. When I finally dropped her off at home, she made it clear that she'd love to do something again. At that moment, I knew that I wanted her by my side for all of life's adventures. I almost Mosby'd it, but I managed to catch myself. I'm so incredibly happy to be marrying her this afternoon. Story 7. There were 2 for me. The first was that early on she told me that she didn't want to be in a long-term relationship if it was just going to end in a breakup. She meant business, and I appreciated that. I knew that if I was ever going to leave her, that was the moment. The second moment really only solidified it for me. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a few years back. At the time, she was unable to walk properly, constantly limping. It took the doctors a solid 3 months of juggling different answers. Some thought it was a knee injury, while one even went so far as to suggest that she had a stroke. One night I was trying to see just what she was unable to do, so I asked her to simply skip across the room. She gave it her best, but ultimately she staggered across the room, grasping to the wall to keep from falling down. I sat on the couch and began to weep, and I knew I had to be with her forever. If there wasn't going to be a wall there or a railing or anything, I'd have to be there to protect her. No one else could do it. She can walk fine now, but I still feel that sense of protection for her. She could wake up tomorrow and be blind, or unable to move her legs, or something. I don't know. I just need to make sure that whatever she can't do, I can do for the both of us. I forgot to mention that we're getting married in September. Damn, that's how I feel about my girlfriend. Wait, do I have a girlfriend? Story 8. Before we were romantically involved or anything, we became friends, then best friends, and were always hanging out together. After about a year, one day it kind of hit us that we were together. Sometime during that early friendship, I realized I couldn't imagine life without her. That Christmas, I bought her a small princess cut diamond ring. When I bought it, I didn't really think of it as a promise ring, just a really nice gift, but it ended up being just that. After 3.5 years of living together and saving up for the real thing, I asked her to marry me. All of our friends considered us a couple before we were a couple, engaged before we were engaged, and married before we were married, if that makes sense. Also, a funny story about that promise ring. I showed my buddy, who ended up being my best man in the wedding, that first ring I was going to get her, and he warned me, "Our ring's a big deal, man, but it's really nice." Later, I told her I'd shown my friends what I was getting her for Christmas, and she said, "Oh, what did they say about it?" Me not thinking, blurted out, "Well, best man said, our ring's a big deal." And then I just froze. Crap is running through my head right now, and she seems to be disbelieving that I got her a ring, so I run with it. When I actually went to give her the ring, I ran a piece of dental floss through it, came up behind her while she was going through the contents of a kitchen cabinet, and said, "Merry Christmas, I got you a necklace," and laced it around her neck. She actually thought it was a necklace until she looked down and was genuinely surprised at the ring. I'll never forget that moment. Story 9. I started a new job, and being single, took note of the girls strewn about the place. One day one of them asked if I wanted to eat lunch together, which was a surprise because we hadn't really interacted much. So we ordered some food and went out to the courtyard. The conversation was going well when she mentioned her son. I put the poker face on because the last thing I wanted was a single mom with all the accompanying drama. I was happy to leave it at lunch. But then we ate together again the next day and started engaging in playful banter back in the ER, which was where we worked, not because one of us had gone sick or injured. On my day off, I did some shopping for new work clothes and stopped at my grandmother's to show her what a freaking fashion plate I was, and I mentioned the girl that I didn't want to get involved with because she had a kid. Grandma recommended not ruling anything out. Another shift full of flirtation came and went, and when I said goodbye to the girl, she told me she had a crush on me and gave me her email address. And the emails led to the phone number exchange, which led to the texting and late-night conversations. So about 2 months after I started there, and maybe a week and a half after that first lunch, we made plans to meet outside of work. That was a Friday. We went to a park for a few hours between the end of my shift and the beginning of hers. The next night we went to dinner. The next afternoon I stopped by the barbecue her family was having. The following night, we hung out after our shifts ended, and as we were standing there leaning against her car, I barely even formed the thought when I heard my mouth say, "You know we're going to wind up getting married, right?" She nodded. I asked, "Do you want to just go ahead and do it sooner than later?" She nodded again. A few days later, we were booking a trip to Vegas. Pick the flight and hotel and go through other options like, "Do you want a rental car?" Nope. Then we get to, "Do you want to get married?" Actually, yes. "Do you want Elvis to perform the ceremony?" I had to pass on that one. But here we are, almost 7 years later, still married, and we have a total of 5 kids. I treat the oldest like my own. I'm the only one he's ever called Daddy. And he's asking about getting his last name changed to mine. It's currently my wife's maiden name. The donor bailed as soon as he learned she was pregnant. I'm glad I listened to Grandma. Yep, Mimo knows her shit. Story 10. The more I found out about my then girlfriend, the more I was impressed. I found out through a friend of hers the enormous sacrifices she had to make to attend college. My wife is from Mexico near the border, and she and I went to college in the U.S. side. She worked a job in the Mexican side where she had to save every penny to pay the much more expensive U.S. tuition, even though her family was extremely poor and would have benefited greatly from the extra money her parents wouldn't allow her to help so she could follow her dream. Her transportation was a 1980s bike, rusty chain and all. Rain or shine, she rode the 45 minutes or so to school. When it rained, she would carry an extra change of clothes in a plastic bag in her backpack and change in the bathroom at school. She couldn't afford books but did the best she could. Her first semester, she didn't really understand English and struggled the whole semester, but passed. The determination and dedication she demonstrated showed me the kind of person she is and the awesome partner she would be. She's the most selfless, giving person I know and my best friend. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.